Principles, by Ray Dalio. Above all else, I want you to think for yourself. Ray Dalio. About this summary. This document is a detailed summary of Ray Dalio's Principles, one of the most influential management and life philosophy texts written by the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund. The book contains 3 distinct parts. Part 1 defines what principles are and why they matter. Part 2 presents Dalio's fundamental life principles, including his personal philosophy on reality, truth, and personal evolution. And Part 3 outlines more than 200 management principles developed and stress-tested over 35-plus years of running Bridgewater. Dalio's central argument is that having explicit, well-reasoned principles, and consistently applying them, is the key to achieving both individual success and organizational excellence. This summary captures every major idea, framework, and principle in the book, organized to preserve the logical flow of Dalio's thinking. Contents. Part 1, The Importance of Principles. Part 2, Life Principles. I. Background and Foundational Philosophy. 2. Hyperrealism and Truth. 3. Evolution and the Laws of Nature. IV. Your Most Important Choices. V. The 2 U's in your machine. Vi. The 5-step process to getting what you want. 7. Weaknesses, Solutions, and Compensation. Part 3, Management Principles. I. Culture, Trust in Truth. 2. Create a mistake learning culture. 3. Constant synchronization. IV. Getting the people right, versus people are built very differently. Vi. Hiring right. 7. Managing as a machine designer. 8. Deep probing and evaluation. X. Training, testing, and sorting people. X. Perceiving, diagnosing, and solving problems. 11. Organizational design. 12. Making decisions effectively. Key takeaways and synthesis. Part 1, The Importance of Principles. What are principles? Dalio opens by making a fundamental distinction. Principles are not narrow answers to specific questions. They are concepts that can be applied again and again across similar circumstances. Every domain of life, parenting, investing, skiing, managing, has its own set of principles. Above all these domain-specific principles sit overarching life principles that influence everything we do. Principles connect values to actions. Your values are what you consider important. Your principles are what allow you to live consistently with those values. When you face a hard choice, it is to your principles that you turn. Without explicit principles, you are forced to react to whatever comes at you without any stable framework, a condition that is bad for individuals and catastrophic for organizations. Why principles matter? All successful people, Dalio argues, operate by principles that make them effective. Without principles, there is no systematic way to make choices aligned with what you value. For groups and companies, the absence of shared principles produces random, incoherent behavior, people bumping into each other without understanding their own values or how to cooperate. Dalio points out that principles typically come from 2 sources. We forge our own through experience and reflection, or we adopt packages of principles from traditions, religions, or legal systems. Pre-packaged principles are not automatically bad, but accepting them without critical thought exposes you to the risk of incompatibility with your true values. The hypocrite who claims religious principles but acts against them suffers from exactly this problem. Your principles must genuinely reflect what you believe. The central invitation. Throughout the book, Dalio extends a single core invitation. Ask yourself of every principle he presents, is it true? He does not want followers, he wants independent thinkers. His goal is for his principles to be stress-tested, debated, and either adopted because they are genuinely good or improved through critical scrutiny. He acknowledges that his principles will evolve, and he hopes readers will develop their own. Whatever success Bridgewater and I have had has resulted from our operating by certain principles. Part 2, Life Principles. I. Background and Dalio's formative story. Dalio grew up in a middle-class Long Island neighborhood as an ordinary student with a poor rote memory but a strong contextual memory and love of logic. He began investing at age 12 as a caddie, buying stock in Northeast Airlines simply because it was cheap, and got lucky. That early win planted the belief that markets were beatable. Subsequent losses taught him that being right is genuinely hard. His career took him through Long Island, Harvard Business School, Wall Street, and eventually to founding Bridgewater Associates in 1975 from a tiny New York apartment. He was fired from his first major job for insubordination, a characteristic that would later become a design feature of the culture he built. These early experiences converged around 5 personal operating principles that would define his entire adult approach. Work for what you want, not for what others want of you. Come up with the best independent opinions you can muster. Stress test your opinions by having the smartest people you can find challenge them. Remain wary about being overconfident. Become comfortable with not knowing. Wrestle with reality. Experience the results of your decisions, reflect, and improve. These 5 operating habits, established by age 12 and refined through decades, form the personal backbone of everything that follows in the book. 2. Hyperrealism and truth. Dalio's most fundamental life principle is what he calls being a hyperrealist. He distinguishes hyperrealism from cynicism. Hyperrealists are dreamers, too, but they understand that the only path to realizing dreams runs through an accurate understanding of reality. He writes that idealists who are not grounded in reality create problems rather than progress, communism being his prime example of a system conceived with good intentions but built on a misunderstanding of human nature. Truth, more precisely, an accurate understanding of reality, is the essential foundation for producing good outcomes. This leads directly to his foundational equation for a successful life. Reality plus dreams plus determination equals a successful life. Being truthful, Dalio argues, is not just ethically correct, it is functionally necessary. People who are one way on the inside and another way outside become conflicted and lose touch with what they really think and feel. It is difficult for them to be happy, and nearly impossible for them to be at their best. Radical honesty, saying exactly what you believe, is therefore an act of self-preservation as much as an act of ethics. 3. Evolution and the laws of nature. Dalio sees evolution as the greatest single force in the universe. He observes that in nature, what is rewarded is what works, and what is punished is what doesn't. He argues that humans, as part of nature, are subject to the same laws. The pack of hyenas killing a wildebeest appears cruel in isolation but is a necessary part of an extraordinarily complex and efficient system. The short-term bad outcome serves the long-term good of evolution. This perspective gives Dalio our non-traditional moral framework. Good means operating consistently with natural laws. Bad means working against them. Pragmatic effectiveness, not social convention, is his North Star. He makes several key observations about the nature of desire and evolution. The things we strive for are bait to make us evolve. The evolution itself, not the reward, is what satisfies us. Because of the law of diminishing returns, we must constantly seek new goals and new dimensions of old goals to remain satisfied. Self-interest and society's interests are generally symbiotic. Giving society what it wants, genuinely solving real problems, is how money is made. Desire alone does not produce wealth, value production does. Adaptation to setbacks is as important as initial achievement. The fastest adapters tend to be the most successful people. Dalio also notes that human attributes are never purely good or bad. Thorns protect a rose but can also cut. Highly creative, big-picture thinkers may be poor at detail. Highly pragmatic detail thinkers may be poor at creativity. The key is self-knowledge, understanding your own nature, finding the right fit, and building systems that compensate for your weaknesses. IV. Your most important choices. Dalio identifies 5 fundamental types of choices that repeatedly determine the quality of our lives. He presents them as decision trees, arguing that those who move effectively toward their goals make the bottom branch choices while those who struggle make the top branch choices. First choice. Pain as a signal versus pain as a stop sign. It is a law of nature that growth requires pushing limits, which is painful. Pain signals that you are at or near a boundary. The wrong response is the fight or flight reaction, striking out or running away, which prevents learning. The right response is reflection. This leads to Dalio's first great formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Those who develop the reflex to reflect rather than react when encountering pain evolve rapidly. Those who fight or flee encounter the same barriers over and over. Second choice. Facing harsh realities versus avoiding them. People who confuse what they wish were true with what is really true create distorted pictures of reality. Bad decisions flow from distorted maps. The perpetual question Dalio recommends asking oneself is simply, is it true? Facing harsh realities, however painful, is always the first step toward dealing with them effectively. Third choice. Learning versus protecting the ego. People who worry about looking good hide their weaknesses and thereby never learn to deal with them. The counterintuitive truth is that great people are not those who have all the answers, they are those who earn their greatness by confronting their weaknesses and finding ways around them. Worrying about looking good instead of being good is one of the most common and most costly mistakes humans make. Fourth choice, second-order thinking versus first-order thinking. First-order consequences often have opposite desirability from second- and third-order consequences. Exercise is uncomfortable, first-order, but produces health and attractiveness, second- and third-order. Delicious but unhealthy food tastes great, first-order, but harms the body, second-order. People who optimize for first-order consequences, chasing immediate pleasure or avoiding immediate pain, systematically undermine their long-term goals. The ability to think in second and third orders is a crucial differentiator. Fifth choice, accountability versus blame. Blaming external forces for bad outcomes is both factually wrong, you always had choices about how to respond, and strategically counterproductive, it diverts attention from the things you can change. Successful people understand that life will throw challenges at everyone, it is their personal responsibility to handle them effectively. Dalio quotes nature, "It is not sympathetic." If he had to choose one quality that distinguishes those who make the right choices, Dalio says it is character, the ability to get yourself to do difficult things that produce desired results. The two use in your machine. One of Dalio's most original conceptual contributions is the distinction between two aspects of the self. He asks us to imagine you, 1, the designer and overseer of your life's plan, and you, 2, the participant in executing that plan. You, 1, must assess you, 2, objectively, as a resource to be deployed wisely, not spared. The analogy, if your goal is to have a winning basketball team, it would be foolish to put yourself in a position you don't play well simply to protect your ego. The same applies to all areas of life. You, 1, must be willing to fire you, 2, from a role you, 2, cannot perform well, and find a replacement, whether another person, a tool, or a process design change. The biggest mistake most people make is the failure to see themselves and others objectively. This framework positions the self not as a fixed identity to be defended but as a machine component to be rationally assessed and improved. It is a radical reframe of identity that makes genuine self-improvement psychologically accessible. When you discover a weakness in you, 2, you, 1, has simply acquired actionable information. The biggest mistake most people make is to not see themselves and others objectively. The 5-step process to getting what you want. Dalio's practical framework for achieving goals is a 5-step iterative process. He insists that the steps must be taken sequentially and kept distinct. Blurring them produces inferior results. He also emphasizes that you don't need to excel personally at each step. You just need to ensure each step gets done, even if that means enlisting others. Step 1. Have clear goals. Life is a smorgasbord of more options than you can ever taste. The first and hardest work is deciding what you really want, and accepting that choosing one thing means not choosing others. A critical distinction: goals are the things you truly want to achieve. Desires are things you want that might undermine your goals, junk food when your goal is fitness. Goals are good. Unexamined desires are dangerous because they masquerade as goals. Dalio urges setting goals without first assessing attainability. Limiting your goals to what seems achievable at the moment shrinks your aspirations. Great expectations create great capabilities. He advises approaching goals with both total flexibility about method and total accountability about outcome. Step 2. Identify and do not tolerate problems. Most problems are potential improvements screaming at you. The louder the pain, the more important the problem. 2 failure modes exist. Failing to perceive problems, usually due to psychological avoidance or insufficient attention, and perceiving problems but tolerating them. Both are equally fatal. Tolerance is actually worse in some ways. It signals a lack of motivation to improve. Dalio notes the most common reasons people fail to identify problems. They are unpleasant to look at. Thinking about hard problems produces anxiety. People worry about looking bad rather than actually improving. And some people simply cannot distinguish big problems from small ones. The solution is to learn to approach problems with the excitement of a gem hunter. Each problem solved contains a principle that prevents future recurrences. Step 3. Diagnose the problems. People almost universally jump from identifying a problem to proposing a solution, skipping the essential diagnosis step. This produces solutions that treat symptoms rather than root causes. Diagnosis requires calm, logical thinking and the willingness to identify what people are actually like rather than what we wish they were. A critical distinction: proximate causes describe what happened. I missed the train because I didn't check the schedule, while root causes describe why. I didn't check because I am forgetful. Root causes are described with adjectives, personality traits, behavioral patterns, not verbs, actions. Eliminating root causes prevents recurrence. Treating proximate causes just moves the symptom around. Step 4. Design the plan. Creating a design is like writing a movie script. You visualize who will do what, when, and how, in order to achieve the goal. Dalio recommends thinking in timelines, sketching broad steps first, then filling in with specific tasks and estimated dates. The plan should be written down to prevent forgetting the goals while executing the tasks. Design requires creativity and practical visualization. It takes only a few hours relative to the many hours of execution that follow, but those hours are invaluable because they determine whether the execution will be effective. Most people skip or rush design. This is one of the most common causes of wasted effort. Step 5. Do the tasks. Great planners who don't execute go nowhere. Execution requires self-discipline and the daily prioritization of tasks that connect to goals. Dalio emphasizes that people need to-do lists that are reasonably prioritized and the discipline to act on them. He notes that poor workers react randomly to whatever comes at him, while strong workers hold their plan in mind and resist distractions. Benchmarks and external measurement are essential. You need to know whether you are actually following the plan, not just believing you are. The iterative nature of the process. The 5-step process is a feedback loop. After completing one step, you acquire information that may cause you to revisit earlier steps. Goals change slowly, designs change faster, tasks change fastest. The error many people make is clinging rigidly to specific tasks while losing sight of the goals they were designed to achieve. Always ask, why are we doing this task? To maintain the connection. 7. Weaknesses, solutions, and compensation. Everyone has weaknesses. The decisive difference between successful and unsuccessful people is not the presence or absence of weaknesses, but whether they find and address them. Dalio identifies 2 reasons weaknesses are hard to see. Ego barriers. Society teaches that having weaknesses is shameful, so people avoid looking for them. The missing sense problem. Having a weakness is like missing a sense. If you can't visualize what it is, it's hard to perceive its absence. The practical strategy is to identify which of the 5 steps you are weakest at, find people who are strong at those steps, and create compensating partnerships. Dalio does not need to be good at everything. He needs to be honest about what he is not good at and design around those gaps. This is the whole approach condensed to a single sentence. Part 3. Management Principles. Overview. Culture and People. Bridgewater's success, Dalio argues, comes from 2 things working together: a great culture and great people. Culture determines how everyone approaches goals, problems, diagnoses, designs, and execution. People provide the capabilities to execute. If either is poor, the organization cannot function well. The management principles that follow are applications of the life principles from Part 2 to an organizational context. The central model Dalio uses is the machine. An organization is a machine consisting of culture, design, and people, parts. The machine produces outcomes. By comparing outcomes to goals, through feedback loops, management can continuously improve the machine. The quality of these feedback loops is the most important differentiator between great organizations and bad ones. I believe that the most important difference between great organizations and bad ones is in how well they manage their feedback loops. Culture. Trust in truth. The first and most fundamental cultural principle at Bridgewater is a blanket commitment to truth. Dalio argues that understanding, accepting, and working with reality is the only path to good outcomes. This has several practical implications. Radical openness. Everyone has the right to understand what makes sense. No one has the right to hold a critical opinion without voicing it. Being open, especially about dislikes and disagreements, is necessary because things you don't like either need to be changed or resolved, and silence prevents both. Dalio's phrase, just don't filter. Integrity. Integrity, from the Latin integer meaning 1, means that your outside matches your inside. People who say one thing and think another become conflicted and lose touch with their own values. At Bridgewater, the most important practical expression of integrity is, never say anything about a person you wouldn't say directly to their face. Talking behind people's backs is called one of the worst offenses at Bridgewater. It produces misinformation, creates resentment, and prevents improvement. Radical transparency. Dalio's commitment to transparency extends to recording almost all meetings and sharing them with relevant staff. The principle, People who have direct access to what is happening can form their own views, and those views lead to better group decisions. False hopes swept away, do more damage than uncomfortable truths delivered early. Intolerance of dishonesty. Dishonesty is not tolerated at any level. Critically, someone caught being dishonest who claims to have seen the light should not be believed. The probability of continued dishonesty is high. The cost of keeping dishonest people around far outweighs any short-term benefit. 2. Create a mistake learning culture. The second major cultural pillar is a radical reframing of mistakes. At Bridgewater, it is acceptable, even celebrated, to make mistakes. What is not acceptable is failing to identify, analyze, and learn from them. The mistake-innovation relationship. Effective, innovative thinkers will necessarily make mistakes. This is inseparable from the process of innovation. Treating mistakes as evidence of personal failure is both factually wrong and strategically counterproductive. It freezes behavior and prevents the very trial and error that produces improvement. Dalio invokes Michael Jordan as an example. Jordan was not born great. He loved his mistakes and mined them relentlessly for information. Key principles for mistake culture. 1. Do not feel bad about mistakes. They are expected. They are the first step of learning. Feeling bad about them prevents improvement. 2. Observe patterns of mistakes. Isolated mistakes may be accidents. Patterns are almost always symptoms of deeper root causes or weaknesses. 3. Don't depersonalize mistakes. Always connect mistakes to specific people by name. "We didn't handle this well" is less useful than "Harry didn't handle this well." Personal accountability requires personal attribution. 4. Get over blame and credit. Replace blame and credit with accurate and inaccurate. What matters is not who deserves punishment or praise, but what is true and what should change. 5. Write down weaknesses. Hiding them slows progress. Making them visible creates accountability and focus for improvement. 6. Use the issues log. A mandatory tool at Bridgewater. Every problem is logged, diagnosed, and tracked. The log acts as a water filter that catches mistakes and traces them to their source, enabling systematic elimination. 3. Constantly getting in sync. The third cultural pillar is continuous synchronization. Ongoing conversations about what is true and what should be done about it. Getting in sync is not consensus seeking, it is a structured pursuit of the best answer through open dialogue. Assertive open-mindedness. Dalio's core communication principle. Be assertive and open-minded at the same time. Don't try to win arguments, try to find out what is true. Finding out that you are wrong is even more valuable than being right, because you are learning. He distinguishes open-minded from closed-minded people clearly. Open-minded people ask questions and realize what they know is limited. Closed-minded people tell you what they know even when they know very little. He goes further. Avoid closed-minded people entirely, because they waste your time and theirs. Believability-weighted decisions. Not all opinions are equally valuable. Dalio introduces the concept of believability, the probability that a person's view will be right, assessed by the quality of their reasoning and their track record. A novice and an expert should not be treated as equals in a discussion of their domain. Bridgewater maintains baseball cards on people, records of their performance across various dimensions, to make believability assessments systematic and transparent. He draws an analogy. If Tiger Woods and a beginning golfer disagree on swing technique, it would be absurd to weight their views equally. The beginner should listen, ask good questions, and understand the reasoning, but not treat their own guess as equal to the champion's experience. The hierarchy of conversation types. Dalio distinguishes 3 types of conversations, each requiring a different approach. Debate, among approximate equals working toward the best answer. Discussion, open-minded exploration among people of varying knowledge levels. Teaching, between someone with more and someone with less understanding. Clarity about which type of conversation you're having prevents confusion and wasted effort. He also identifies the failure modes. Topic slip, randomly drifting from subject to subject, failure to achieve completion, ending without conclusions or assigned actions, and group decision-making that masks individual responsibility. Escalation. When people cannot get in sync, they must escalate to a mutually agreed upon third party. This is a structural feature of Bridgewater's culture. Disagreements that can't be resolved at one level move up the hierarchy. This prevents unresolved conflicts from festering underground. IV. Getting the people right. Dalio declares that the most important decisions you make are who you choose as your responsible parties. Almost everything good comes from having great people operating in a great culture. He frames people as the components of the organizational machine, and the quality of the machine depends entirely on the quality of its components. Match person to design. The starting point of all people decisions is the design. What is the job, what outcomes must it produce, and what values, abilities, and skills are required to produce those outcomes. Only after this profile is clear can you meaningfully assess whether a person fits it. The sequence matters: design first, people second. Never build the design around the people you happen to have. Values, abilities, and skills. Dalio creates a hierarchy of personnel qualities. Values, deep-seated beliefs that motivate behavior. People fight for their values. They are extremely hard to change and must be compatible with the organization's culture. At Bridgewater, key values are a drive for excellence, truth at all costs, a high sense of ownership, and strong character. Abilities, ways of thinking and behaving, learning speed, common sense, creativity, logical rigor, organizational capacity. Difficult to change but somewhat more malleable than values. Skills, learn tools such as coding, speaking a language, or financial modeling. Relatively easy to acquire, and often become obsolete. Most replaceable of the three. In hiring, Dalio weighs values first, abilities second, and skills last. Hiring someone with the wrong values but great skills is a persistent organizational error he warns against repeatedly. Responsible parties. The responsible party, RP, is the person who bears the consequences of what is done, and therefore the person who must make decisions. You cannot delegate responsibility away from yourself, you can only delegate tasks. If you delegate a task to a doctor, you are still the RP for whether that doctor is right for the situation. Dalio argues that you get what you deserve over time. Results are a function of how well you and your people learn to handle things. Versus people are built very differently. Dalio devotes significant space to the ways people think differently, drawing on research into neuroscience and personality psychology. He believes that understanding these differences, and using them openly, is essential for putting the right people in the right jobs. Left brain versus right brain thinking. Drawing on Nobel laureate Roger Sperry's research, Dalio describes two dominant cognitive styles. Left-brained thinkers reason sequentially, analyze details, excel at linear analysis. Often called bright when they excel. Right-brained thinkers reason holistically, recognize themes, synthesize the big picture. Often called smart when they excel. These two types often frustrate each other in communication and may radically disagree about the same meeting because they are literally processing different information. Other key cognitive dimensions. Dalio identifies several other dimensions that matter for job fit. Detail-oriented versus big-picture-oriented. Some see trees, others see forests. Neither is superior, each fits different roles. Memory-based learners versus reasoning-based thinkers. Memory-based learners follow learned rules. Reasoning-based thinkers derive answers from first principles. The latter tend to be more innovative and less conventional. Task-focused versus goal-focused. Some people thrive with stable, repetitive processes, others excel at creating and managing change. Planners versus perceivers. Planners commit to a plan and execute it. Perceivers scan the environment and adapt in real time. Emotion-driven versus intellect-driven. Some people let emotions override judgment in difficult moments. Others maintain analytical control. Risk-averse versus risk-taking. Important to understand when assigning responsibilities under uncertainty. Introvert versus extrovert. Introverts often find necessary conflicts more difficult, which matters in a culture that depends on open disagreement. Dalio's advice: use personality assessment tools, explore these differences openly, and assign responsibilities that align with natural cognitive styles. Hiding or ignoring differences leads to misassignment and underperformance. Hiring right. Dalio calls hiring the highest leverage activity in management. The penalties of hiring wrong are enormous and compound over time. A bad hire costs bad performance over months or years, negative effects on team culture, wasted training investment, and the pain of eventual separation. The hiring process. Write the full profile of the ideal candidate into the job description before starting. Select interviewers who can identify the qualities you're looking for. People tend to hire people like themselves, so design against this bias. Use personality assessments systematically. They are often more objective and reliable than interviews. Dig deeply into track records and past behavior, asking not just what someone did but why. The why reveals values and abilities. Don't overweight academic performance. School measures memory and processing speed well, but these are less important than common sense, vision, creativity, and decision-making for most roles. Ask for past reviews and check references seriously. Look for people who have lots of great questions, even more important than great answers. Make candidates interview Bridgewater, not just the reverse. Show them the real culture. Dalio's most distinctive hiring advice. Don't hire for the first job the person will do. Hire people you want to share your life with, people whose values and trajectory are compatible with yours long term. The costs of turnover, the time to onboard, the cultural disruption, the knowledge loss, are far higher than most managers appreciate. And finally, accept the statistical reality that even excellent hiring processes will produce mismatches. The interviewing process must continue intensely after the hire for at least 6 to 18 months. Never stop assessing. 7. Managing as a machine designer. Once people are in place, management is the process of designing, operating, and continuously improving the machine that produces outcomes. Dalio distinguishes 3 modes. Not managing. Having people do their jobs without oversight or feedback. Micromanaging. Telling people exactly what tasks to do, or doing their tasks for them. Managing properly. Understanding how well people and processes are working to achieve goals, and continuously improving both. The analogy he uses is skiing together. A ski instructor doesn't carry the student down the mountain. They ski alongside, observe performance in real conditions, give feedback, and gradually increase autonomy as competence grows. Key management principles. 1. Constantly compare outcomes to goals. Identify whether problems arise from the design, culture, systems, or from the people. Large sample sizes matter. Any single problem might be a one-off. Patterns reveal root causes. 2. Look down on the machine from above. Higher-level thinking means seeing yourself and your team from a top-down perspective, like looking at Earth from space. This gives you the context to design effectively and diagnose accurately. 3. Discuss problems at 2 levels. The machine level, why did this outcome occur? And the case at hand level, what should we do right now? Skipping the machine level discussion is micromanagement. It does the employee's thinking for them. 4. Don't try to be followed, try to be understood. The goal is mutual understanding of what is true and what is best, not compliance driven by authority. People who understand why they are doing something perform better and develop judgment. 5. Clearly assign responsibilities. Ambiguity about who owns what is one of the most common causes of failure. Every goal and every task must have a named responsible party. 6. Hold people accountable, not as punishment but as respect. Holding people accountable to their commitments is the only way to build a reliable machine. Avoiding daily accountability produces large, costly failures later. 7. Think like an owner. Spend money as if it were your own. Act in the interest of the community. Expect others to do the same. 8. Escalate when you can't handle your responsibilities. Passing the RP roll up the chain when genuinely overwhelmed is not weakness, it is the responsible thing. What is unacceptable is pretending to handle something you cannot. 8. Deep probing and accurate evaluation. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of Dalio's management approach is the insistence on deep, continuous probing of the people who work for you, and an invitation for them to probe you. Why probe? Few people see themselves objectively. Managers are often surprised by problems they should have anticipated. Probing creates the sample size needed to distinguish one-off errors from systemic patterns, and it signals to employees that their manager is genuinely engaged rather than distant. How to probe? Don't pick your battles. Fight them all. Even small signals of badness can be symptomatic of serious underlying problems. Don't let people off the hook. Ask the important, difficult questions and independently verify answers. Don't assume that answers are correct. Some answers are spin. Build a culture where accuracy matters and is verifiable. Make probing transparent, not private. Others observing the probing can make their own assessments, and transparency reinforces cultural norms. Probe 2 levels down. Understand how your direct reports manage their direct reports. Evaluate accurately, not kindly. Dalio argues forcefully that accurate evaluations are kinder in the long run than kind evaluations that avoid hard truths. Keeping someone in a role they cannot perform is harmful to them, prevents evolution, and to the organization, erodes results and meritocracy. The right question to ask about any employee. Would I hire this person knowing what I now know? Bridgewater uses several tools to make evaluation systematic. Baseball cards, records of each person's performance across multiple dimensions, updated continuously. Used to make transparent assessments and role assignments. Performance surveys and metrics. Structured 360-degree feedback and objective performance measures that reveal patterns invisible to any single observer. Forced rankings. Requiring people to rank colleagues from best to worst, which counteracts grade inflation in assessments. Training, testing, and sorting people. Dalio sees training not as instruction but as guided personal evolution. The goal is internalization, the kind of deep knowledge that operates automatically, the way an experienced skier skis without consciously recalling technique. Book learning and hands-on internalized learning are fundamentally different, and only the latter produces reliable performance. Key training principles. 1. Teach to fish, don't give fish. Share your reasoning about how you would approach a decision. Don't dictate what to do. The employee must develop their own judgment, not just follow orders. 2. Allow learning mistakes. Sometimes it is better to let people make mistakes rather than prevent them. The connection between cause and effect must be experienced, not just told. The limits, don't let them total the car. 3. Behavior modification takes 18 months. First comes intellectual understanding, then the intellect fights with emotion and habit. After consistent application for 18 months, the new behavior internalizes. This timeline is not negotiable, it reflects how human neuroplasticity actually works. 4. Train, don't rehabilitate. Training builds on existing abilities. Rehabilitation tries to change fundamental values or abilities, which is nearly impossible. People whose values are incompatible with the organization should be sorted out, not rehabilitated. Sorting people. When someone is not right for a job, the right action is to move quickly. Dalio is explicit. It is far worse to keep someone in a role they can't perform than to let them go. The costs of keeping a poor performer compound. Bad output, demoralizing effect on the team, wasted training investment, and the greater pain of separation later. The first question when someone is underperforming: is this a capacity issue, they need more time, more resources, more experience, or a capability issue, they lack the fundamental ability to do this job? The test: imagine how they would perform if they had ample capacity. The answer guides what to do. X. Perceiving, diagnosing, and solving problems. Problems are the fuel for improvement. Every problem is a manifestation of a root cause in the machine, either a design flaw or a people problem. Finding and eliminating root causes is how organizations improve. Perceiving problems. The first essential skill is seeing problems at all. Dalio identifies the frog in boiling water as the most common failure mode, gradual deterioration that, because it is slow, never triggers the alarm that sudden badness would. People get used to unacceptable conditions and stop seeing them as problems. Fresh eyes, or a structured process of comparison against explicit standards, are needed to overcome this. Dalio's tools for finding problems. Issues logs, mandatory records of everything that goes wrong, diagnosed to root causes. Metrics, objective measures of individual and group performance, designed to resist gaming. Surveys, of both workers and customers, capturing perspective that observation misses. Checklists, ensuring that agreed tasks are completed as intended. Internal auditors and outside consultants, people without vested interests in the status quo. Diagnosing root causes. Diagnosis is foundational both to progress and to quality relationships. Dalio provides a structured diagnostic framework. What suboptimality occurred? What was the bad outcome? Who is the responsible party for the machine that produced this outcome? What was the mental map? How was the machine supposed to work? What broke, the design or the people? What are the proximate causes and the root causes? Is this consistent with prior patterns? What is the systemic solution? He emphasizes that root causes are described with adjectives, not verbs. The system failed because Harry is forgetful is a root cause diagnosis. The system failed because Harry didn't check the schedule is only a proximate cause. Keep asking why until you arrive at a description of what something is like, not just what happened. The drill down technique. For a department that is systemically underperforming, Dalio recommends a structured 4-step drill down. List problems specifically, name names, cite cases, avoid generalizations. Identify root causes, what makes the people or design produce these outcomes. Create a plan, assign who will do what by when to address each root cause. Implement, monitor, and modify, track progress transparently, hold people accountable to target dates. Done well, the first 2 steps take about 4 hours of focused work and yield an 80/20 understanding of why a department is struggling. The entire process, through implementation, typically spans 6 to 12 months. 11. Organizational design. The organizational machine must be designed before it is staffed. Dalio's organizing principle is to build around goals, not tasks. Departments exist to achieve outcomes, not to perform activities. Design principles. 1. Build from the top down. Hire managers before the direct reports. Managers help design the machine and select its components. Without this, you risk having the design shaped by the people available rather than the goals pursued. 2. Make departments self-sufficient. Each department should control the resources it needs to achieve its goals. Shared resource pools create bureaucratic friction and misaligned priorities. 3. Maintain clear reporting lines. Dual reporting, reporting to two managers or two departments, causes confusion, complicates prioritization, and muddles accountability. In the organizational chart, lines go down without crossing. 4. Keep spans of control manageable. The ratio of senior managers to their direct reports should not exceed 1:10, and preferably be closer to 1:5. This preserves the quality of communication and understanding that management requires. 5. Constantly produce leverage. The best management produces outcomes without the manager doing the detailed work themselves. A supreme manager creates systems and trains people so thoroughly that operations run well without constant intervention. 6. Avoid job slip and department slip. Job slip is when a role gradually expands into areas not explicitly designed. Department slip is when a support function begins determining strategy instead of enabling it. Both must be actively managed. Key tools for organizational management. Dalio recommends several specific tools to operationalize good design. Procedures Manual, a living document that captures how all machine components should operate, updated continuously with lessons from the issues log. Checklists, ensuring agreed tasks are completed as intended, without allowing checklists to substitute for judgment about whether the task itself was the right one. Double do instead of double check. For mission-critical tasks, have two people independently complete the task and compare results. This captures errors far more reliably than having one person check another's work. Daily updates, brief written reports from each employee on what they did, what they plan to do, their problems, and their questions. Takes 5 minutes to write, dramatically improves manager awareness. 12. Making decisions effectively. The final section of management principles addresses decision-making under uncertainty, the universal condition all managers face. Dealing with not knowing. Dalio's first principle of decision-making is the counterintuitive observation that the ability to deal with not knowing is far more powerful than knowing. There is vastly more we don't know than we could ever know. The question that should begin every important decision is, what don't I know, and what should I do about it? The practical answer is almost always, find believable people who have relevant knowledge and experience, understand their reasoning, not just their conclusions, and triangulate across at least 3 such sources. Your goal is to find the best answer, not to give the best one you have. Expected value thinking. Dalio frames every decision as an expected value calculation. Multiply the probability of each outcome by its payoff and choose the action that maximizes expected value. Several key corollaries. The cost of a bad decision is often equal to or greater than the reward of a good one. Therefore, knowing what you don't know is at least as valuable as knowing. Avoid risks of ruin. Decisions where a bad outcome would be catastrophic. No expected value calculation justifies a small chance of catastrophe. Actively seek opportunities where the downside is limited and the upside is large, even if the probability of the upside is low. These asymmetric opportunities are where the most value is found. Diversify bets. Make 15 or more good, uncorrelated bets rather than concentrating on one. Diversification reduces variance while preserving expected returns. The 80-20ths rule. Not everything deserves equal attention. For any decision, 80% of the value can typically be captured by focusing on the top 20% of considerations. Dalio's advice. Identify the 5 or fewer most important factors in a decision, assess them carefully, and don't get lost in the long tail of details that marginally affect the outcome. He warns against 2 failure modes: perfectionism, spending too much time on low-impact details at the expense of high-impact decisions, and detail anxiety, worrying about unimportant small things. At the same time, he notes that some small things are genuinely important. Don't mistake smallness for unimportance. Synthesis. The highest level decision-making skill Dalio discusses is synthesis, the ability to collect disparate observations, dots, connect them into patterns, pictures, and extract principles that apply reliably across many future cases. People who synthesize well can see how their machine is performing across multiple dimensions over time and know which adjustments will compound into lasting improvement. He notes that the level of performance matters more than the rate of change. An improving trend that remains well below the bar is not good enough. The trajectory must be headed for excellence at an acceptable pace, not just moving in the right direction. Key takeaways and synthesis. The unified theory. Beneath the 200-plus specific management principles lies a single coherent theory. Dalio believes that virtually all failure, personal or organizational, comes from refusing to accept and work with reality. And virtually all success comes from doing the opposite, confronting reality honestly, learning from every encounter, and systematically removing the barriers that prevent both. The 3 questions he wants every person and every organization to answer continuously are: what do you want? What is true? What should be done about it? These 3 questions, answered honestly and acted upon with determination, are, in Dalio's view, sufficient to produce excellent outcomes in nearly any domain. The 10 most important principles. If forced to distill the entire book to its most essential principles, they would be: 1. Truth above all else. An accurate understanding of reality is the essential foundation for good outcomes. Without truth, all planning is built on sand. 2. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Pain signals the location of barriers and growth opportunities. Reflect rather than react. Every painful encounter, properly processed, produces a principle that prevents future failures. 3. Embrace radical openness. Being open about what you dislike, what is wrong, and what you don't know is functionally necessary, not just admirable. Filtering produces misinformation. 4. Operate the 5-step process. Goals right pointing arrow, problems right pointing arrow, diagnosis right pointing arrow, design right pointing arrow, tasks, sequentially and iteratively. Never skip diagnosis. Always keep goals in sight while executing tasks. 5. You, 1, must manage you, 2, objectively. The biggest mistake is the failure to see yourself and others clearly. Design your life and organization from a higher level perspective, treating yourself as a resource to be optimally deployed. 6. Build feedback loops everywhere. Organizations improve in proportion to the quality and frequency of their feedback loops. Make problems visible, diagnose root causes, design improvements, implement, repeat. 7. Culture and people together create results. Neither great culture nor great people alone is sufficient. Both must be excellent. The machine produces what its design and components allow it to produce. 8. Hire for values and abilities, train for skills. Values are the hardest to change and matter most. Skills are easiest to acquire and matter least. Hire accordingly. 9. Believability weighted decision making. Treat opinions in proportion to their probable accuracy. Track records and quality of reasoning determine credibility, not seniority or confidence. 10. Know what you don't know. The ability to navigate uncertainty, to find the right questions, the right people, and the right processes for deciding when you lack information, is more powerful than any specific knowledge. Bridgewater's culture in brief. Bridgewater, as Dalio describes it, is built on the belief that meaningful work and meaningful relationships, both pursued through radical honesty and relentless pursuit of truth, are what make people happy and excellent. The culture he has built makes the following demands on everyone who joins. Say what you really think, to the face of the person it concerns. Be open to criticism and use it to improve. Put accurate understanding ahead of the protection of your ego. Hold yourself and others accountable to the highest standards. Learn from every mistake and apply that learning systematically. In return, the culture offers what Dalio describes as the most rewarding thing he has experienced. Meaningful work pursued with excellent people who are genuinely committed to each other's growth. Criticisms and caveats. Dalio acknowledges throughout the book that these principles work for him and at Bridgewater but may not work for everyone. He invites readers to stress test every idea and adopt only those that hold up to scrutiny. A few tensions worth noting. The intensity of Bridgewater's culture, radical transparency, mandatory issues logging, constant probing, is not for everyone. The book acknowledges that many people who join Bridgewater eventually leave because the culture does not fit their personalities. The distinction between abilities, hard to change, and skills, easy to change, is sometimes blurry, and Dalio's advice to sort people out of roles that don't fit their abilities must be applied with care and humanity. The emphasis on believability-weighted opinions, while logically sound, can create hierarchical dynamics that need active management to avoid becoming oligarchies of credentialed insiders. These are real tensions. Dalio does not pretend otherwise. But his argument is that the benefits of this way of operating so dramatically outweigh its costs that the tensions are worth managing. Final words. Dalio ends the book with the observation that he has been lucky. Lucky enough to experience both having little money and having a lot, and to learn that meaningful work and meaningful relationships, not wealth, are what actually make life rich. He has spent his career building a system that allows him and the people around him to get more of those things, faster, by being honest about reality and disciplined about learning from it. He closes with a hope that the reader will take these principles, test them against their own reality, keep what holds up, discard what doesn't, and develop their own. He wants his principles to fade into our principles, and eventually into simply the way things are done, unnamed but internalized, the way the techniques of a great ski instructor eventually become the student's own fluid movement down the mountain. I want you to work for yourself, to come up with independent opinions, to stress test them, to be wary about being overconfident, and to reflect on the consequences of your decisions and constantly improve.